My spine snapped like cheap rebar after 40 minutes lying on the cold factory floor while my own son laughed and stepped over me like I was just another piece of scrap metal. I'm Dorothy Mitchell, 70 years old, and I own Northern Steelworks in Pittsburgh. He thinks I'm just a worn-out tool in my own factory, but he forgot who signed every deed, every contract, every check that built this empire of molten iron. That afternoon, my plant didn't smell like progress. It smelled like contempt and industrial grease. But before we get into the story, please support us by liking and subscribing right now. I also want to say hi. Leave your name, city, and the word present in the comments. I want to know where you're listening from, even in faraway places. I live in the main house right next to the steel mill that I built rivet by rivet with my late husband, William. My hands, now marked by old burn scars from molten metal and knuckles swollen from arthritis, aren't delicate. They're hands that operated cranes, inspected welds at 3 a.m, counted every dollar so that Jason, my only son, would never lack for anything. Maybe that was my mistake, giving him everything without asking for anything in return. At 70, my body doesn't forgive the decades of heavy lifting and 12-hour shifts. I have severe degenerative disc disease in my lower back, something common in women my age who've worked physical jobs for 50 years. My doctor warned me that any sudden movement or excessive strain could leave me unable to walk. I need to be careful, to rest when my back flares up, to lie down immediately when the pain hits. Jason knows this perfectly. He knows because he drove me to those appointments when he wanted to borrow money for investments that never paid off. That afternoon, the pain struck me hard while I was reviewing production reports at my desk. A sharp electric agony shot through my lower spine, like someone had driven a steel spike through my vertebrae. I gasped, clutched the desk edge, and knew immediately. This was bad. I needed to lie down flat, right now, or risk real damage. I managed to stand, my legs trembling, and shuffled toward the break room where there was a couch. Every step sent lightning through my hips. My vision started tunneling. The break room was just 30 feet away, but it felt like miles. I pushed open the door and saw Jason sprawled across the entire couch, his designer sneakers up on the armrest, scrolling through his phone with expensive headphones on. I knocked on the door frame. He didn't look up. I knocked harder, pain making my voice shake. "Jason, I need to lie down. My back, it's bad. Please." He glanced up with irritation, like I'd interrupted something important. He was watching videos, just watching videos while I could barely stand. "Use the floor then. I'm comfortable," he said, putting his headphones back on. The words hit me harder than the pain. Use the floor, like I was a dog. Not like the mother who paid for his college when he failed out twice. Not like the woman who mortgaged everything to buy our first industrial furnace. Not like the owner of the company where he lived like royalty without earning a single dollar. I stood there paralyzed in the doorway. The physical pain was unbearable, but the pain in my soul cut deeper. I tried to hold out. I leaned against the concrete wall, breathing through clenched teeth, counting numbers to distract myself. I looked at the industrial clock on the wall. 5 minutes, 10, 15. My back was screaming. I could feel the discs grinding against each other, the muscles going into spasms. At 20 minutes, I felt something pop in my lower spine. At 30 minutes, my legs buckled slightly. Sweat poured down my face, despite the cold factory air. I, Dorothy Mitchell, the woman who negotiated million-dollar contracts, who faced down union strikes, who traveled alone to international steel conventions after William died. I was barely able to stay upright in my own building. At 40 minutes, my body gave out completely. My legs collapsed, and I crumpled to the floor right there in the doorway. The impact sent another wave of agony through my spine. I lay there on the cold concrete, unable to move, tears streaming down my face, not from sadness, but from pure helplessness and humiliation. At that exact moment, Jason stood up from the couch. He stepped over my body, like I was a piece of equipment left in the walkway. I looked up at him, hoping for concern, for alarm, for the son I'd raised to show even basic human decency. He looked down at me with his clean-shaven face and wrinkled his nose. "Jesus, Mom, you're being dramatic. Get up before the shift workers see you like this. It's embarrassing." He stepped carefully around my outstretched arm and walked away toward the administrative office, closing the door with a firm click. I lay there on that floor, trembling from pain and something much deeper. I didn't feel anger in that moment. I felt a cold, crystalline clarity like quenched steel. Something fundamental had broken between us, and unlike steel, it couldn't be reforged. Friends, every story I tell you is released every day, but YouTube will only show them to you if you tap the red subscribe button. Please do it now while I'm speaking. Tap subscribe, turn on notifications, and you'll never miss a story. Have you done it yet? Thank you. I stayed on that floor for another 10 minutes before I could finally move. Using the doorframe, I pulled myself up inch by agonizing inch. My back felt like it had been welded wrong, the parts not aligned. I shuffled to my office, grabbed my prescribed muscle relaxers and pain medication from my desk drawer, and somehow made it to my private quarters above the administrative building. I took the pills, lay flat on my bed, and let the medication dull the physical pain. But it couldn't touch the wound Jason had opened in my chest. As I stared at the ceiling, I thought about my entire life and how I'd gotten here. I thought about William, my husband. Rest his soul. He always warned me. Dorothy, you're too soft on the boy. Someone who doesn't learn to forge their own life doesn't understand the value of anyone else's work. William was right. I had created this monster. I taught Jason that he could walk over me because I always, absolutely always, ended up forgiving him. I'd given him everything. When he was 8 and wanted an expensive bike, I worked double shifts. When he was 16 and crashed his first car, I bought him another. When he was 25 and his startup failed, I absorbed his debts. When he was 30 and needed a job, I made him general manager of my company, even though he knew nothing about steel production. Every time I told myself I was being a good mother. Every time I was actually teaching him that he could take without giving, consume without producing, hurt without consequences. After an hour, the medication kicked in enough for me to sit up carefully. I moved slowly, mechanically, to my bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror. Gray hair, deep wrinkles, tired eyes, but also something else. I saw the woman who'd built a steel mill when everyone said women couldn't run heavy industry. I saw someone who'd survived. Then I went back downstairs, moving like I was made of glass. I found the industrial mop and cleaning supplies. I cleaned the spot where I'd fallen, erasing the evidence of my humiliation. As my hands pushed the mop, my mind designed a perfect blueprint. This wasn't going to be a screaming revenge. This wasn't going to be a soap opera confrontation. At my age, you learn that silence weighs more than tons of steel. Jason emerged from the office an hour later, dressed in expensive athleisure wear, hair perfectly styled, ready to go out. "What's for dinner?" he asked, dropping onto the couch in the house section like it was a 5-star hotel. I made him his favorites: grilled steak, loaded mashed potatoes, fresh rolls. I watched him eat with that selfish voracity, not saying thank you, chewing with his mouth open while watching videos on his latest iPhone. "Steak's a little dry," he complained, pushing the plate away. "Whatever, I'm going to take a nap. Don't make noise. I have an online meeting at 6. "Rest well, son," I said, in a voice so soft he didn't catch the edge hidden in my words. Jason burped without apology and went to his bedroom. Within minutes, his snoring echoed through the house. He slept deeply, the sleep of the unjust, the sleep of someone who thinks his mother will be there forever, cleaning up his messes. That's when the real Dorothy woke up. I went to my bedroom and locked the door. I knelt in front of the antique cedar wardrobe, not to pray, but to open the secret compartment William had installed decades ago. Inside a small but solid safe was my true power. I pulled out the documents, the property deeds for the industrial facility, the articles of incorporation for Northern Steelworks where my name appeared as majority owner and CEO, the contracts with major clients, all signed by me, the operating licenses, the ISO quality certificates that I'd personally obtained, the patents for our specialized alloy formulas. I also pulled out my technical notebook, that old leather-bound book, where I'd recorded the exact formulas for the specialty alloys we produced. Without those formulas, the foundry would keep running, yes, but it would produce mediocre pieces that clients would reject within weeks. Jason thought the business ran itself. He thought he was the manager because he shouted orders at workers and signed some invoices. He had no idea that the master formulas, the international contacts, the exclusivity contracts, everything was tied to my signature, my knowledge, my 40-year reputation in the industry. I reviewed each document with my reading glasses. Everything was in perfect legal order. Jason had absolutely nothing in his name. He lived here by my generosity, ate from my labor, drove brand new trucks that I paid for. I looked at myself in the dresser mirror. I saw my gray hair, my deep wrinkles, my tired eyes, but I also saw something else. I saw the woman who built a steel mill when everyone said women couldn't run heavy industry. Are you going to let him treat you like trash until you die, Dorothy? I asked myself out loud. The answer was a no so absolute it resonated in my old but solid bones. I pulled out 2 large suitcases from the closet. They were sturdy cases I'd used for industrial conventions. I began to pack. I didn't pack with tears or drama. I packed with an engineer's precision. Underwear, my work shirts, steel-toed boots, my medications for blood pressure and back pain, my jewelry, few pieces but valuable, inherited from my mother, my personal documents, my wedding photo with William, the photo of baby Jason. I hesitated over that last one but packed it anyway. While I folded my clothes, I thought about what Jason would find when he woke up. He'd expect to see me rushing with his coffee. He'd expect the routine to continue. Him insulting, me enduring, him making messes, me cleaning, him spending, me producing. He'd forgotten something fundamental. That patience has a breaking point just like steel, and when that limit shatters, there's no weld that can repair it. I finished packing. The suitcases stood ready by my bedroom door. I looked at my room one last time. It was my refuge, my personal space, leaving it hurt, but staying hurt infinitely more. I grabbed my phone and dialed a number I'd saved months ago. Mr. Patterson? Yes, it's Dorothy Mitchell. I need you to prepare the papers we discussed last year. Yes, exactly those. The time has come to execute them. No, there's no going back. Thank you. I hung up, feeling my heart pound hard, not from fear, but from pure determination. I left my room dragging the suitcases. The wheels made noise on the tile floor, but Jason's snoring was so loud he heard nothing. I passed his closed door and stopped for just a second. I was tempted to go in and scream everything I'd held inside for years, to wake him up and tell him his life as an industrial prince was over. But no, that would give him importance. That would lower me to his level of vulgarity. My silence would be his worst punishment. I went downstairs to the administrative area of the plant. It was 3 p.m, when the furnaces worked at maximum capacity. The employees saw me enter with suitcases and fell silent. Frank, the production supervisor who'd worked with me for 25 years, approached with concern. Mrs. Mitchell, are you going on a trip? Did something bad happen? I looked at him with genuine affection. These men hardened by furnace heat were more my family than my own blood. Yes, Frank, I'm taking a long vacation. A very long one. And Mr. Jason? Asked Tom, the welding chief, wiping his hands on his oil-stained coveralls. I smiled, but it was a cold smile, like untempered metal. Jason stays in charge. For now, you all keep working normally. I'll contact you soon. I went to the safe in my administrative office. I took out all available cash, unsigned checks, corporate credit cards, everything. Jason didn't know the combination to the main safe. If my son came down asking for money, he'd find his hands empty. Frank, I said, returning to the production area, if Jason needs cash for materials, tell him I took everything to deposit it. If he wants money, he'll have to invoice and collect first. I left the plant. Pittsburgh's humid air hit my face, but it felt like freedom. A rideshare I'd ordered was already waiting. The driver, an older, polite gentleman, quickly got out to help me. Good afternoon, ma'am. Where to? The Fairmont Hotel downtown. And after that, to recover my dignity. I got in the car and didn't look back. I didn't look at my industrial facility's facade or the huge sign that said Northern Steelworks. I left behind 40 years of sweat in those steel walls, but I took the most valuable thing, my self-respect. As the car pulled away, I imagined the exact moment when Jason would wake up. He'd shout "Mom" into the air expecting his coffee. He'd go down to the plant looking for me. He'd ask where his mother was, and nobody would have answers. What Jason didn't know was that I wasn't running away. I was initiating an industrial strategy where he was already bankrupt before moving the first piece. The Fairmont hotel room was elegant and quiet. There wasn't the constant noise of cutting machines, the thunder of hydraulic presses, or Jason's shouts demanding things. Just the air conditioning running softly and distant traffic from Liberty Avenue. I sat on the edge of the enormous bed with impeccable white sheets. I looked at my hands in my lap. They still had calluses from years operating machinery. They trembled slightly, not from age but from the magnitude of what I'd just done. I'd abandoned my own company, my own home, as if I were a criminal. But then I remembered the feeling of lying on that cold floor and my son's voice calling me dramatic. That memory was the anchor that kept me from running back to beg for forgiveness. I took out my phone. 6 missed calls from son. It was 5:30 in the afternoon. The prince had awakened. He probably went down to my office expecting to find me reviewing purchase orders. When he didn't see me, he would have thought I'd gone to supervise the warehouse. But when 30 minutes passed without finding me, panic must have started setting in. I left the phone on the table face down. I wasn't ready to hear his voice. First, I needed to confirm what weapons I had for this industrial war he'd started without knowing it. I opened my laptop and logged into the company banking system. Jason had an additional corporate card linked to the main account. I reviewed recent transactions, expensive restaurants, designer clothing stores, gas stations, bars, all paid with money generated by workers sweating in front of 1,000-degree furnaces. I felt a stab of pure rage, but I converted it into cold, calculated action. I searched for the card management option. I found the card registered under Jason Mitchell's name. The system asked, "Do you wish to temporarily block or permanently cancel?" My fingers didn't hesitate. I selected, "Cancel permanently." Confirm. Done. At that instant, somewhere in Pittsburgh, the card Jason carried in his Italian leather wallet became a useless piece of plastic. The next time he tried to pay for his luxuries, the terminal would decline the transaction. I imagined his confused face, then embarrassment in front of the waiter, and finally, uncontrolled fury. If you want to know how this story ends and discover many more, hit the red subscribe button. It's free, and it helps me a lot. But my work wasn't finished. I called Mr. Patterson again. "Mr. Patterson, good afternoon. I'm settled in the hotel. I want you to proceed with Phase 2. Yes, the notification to critical suppliers. I want an official notice sent first thing tomorrow morning to Pittsburgh Steel Supply, to Allegheny Foundry Materials, and to the industrial gas provider. The message must be clear. As of this date, any order or authorization that doesn't bear my handwritten signature or direct digital confirmation will be rejected and will not be paid by Northern Steel Works." Mr. Patterson was silent for a moment. "Mrs. Mitchell, that will completely paralyze operations if your son tries to place orders without your authorization." "Exactly, counselor. I want him to learn that machines don't feed themselves. I want him to hear no when he calls asking for 5 tons of steel. I want him to feel the helplessness." "Understood. I'll proceed immediately." I hung up and stood looking out the 12th floor window. Below, Pittsburgh pulsed with its industrial life. Loaded trucks, factories operating, money moving. Nobody knew that in this hotel room, a 70-year-old woman had just cut off the oxygen supply to her son's inflated ego. My stomach growled, reminding me I hadn't eaten since the light breakfast before the floor incident. I called room service. "Good evening. I'd like the French onion soup, a ribeye steak medium rare, and a glass of red wine." "Yes, charge it to the room, please." While waiting for my food, my phone kept vibrating. 12 missed calls now. 5 WhatsApp messages. I read them without opening the chat so the blue check marks wouldn't appear. "Mom, where are you? Frank says you left with suitcases. This is ridiculous. Suppliers are calling about overdue invoices. Where did you leave the payments? Mom, my card isn't working. The bank must have an error. Call to fix it." I read each message feeling a dark satisfaction. The chaos was beginning. He thought this was a temporary tantrum, that I'd return in a few hours crying, ready to solve his problems. He had no idea I wasn't planning my return, but my rebirth as the true owner of Northern Steel Works. I got in the hotel shower. I turned on the hot water and let it fall on my back without hurry, without fear that someone would pound on the door demanding their turn, without anxiety that the hot water would run out. I used the lavender-scented soaps. I rinsed slowly, washing away the remains of the submissive woman I'd been until that afternoon. When I emerged wrapped in the hotel's fluffy robe, my dinner arrived. I sat facing the window with my wine glass in hand. I toasted my own reflection in the glass. "To you, Dorothy," I whispered, "and to the woman who no longer lies on the floor waiting." That night, I slept deeply for the first time in years. The next morning I woke early from pure habit. It was 5 a.m., the time I normally checked that the furnaces started correctly. But today, I didn't get up. I stayed in bed enjoying the soft mattress, the clean sheets, the silence. At 8, I went down to the hotel restaurant. I ordered eggs Benedict and fresh coffee. While eating breakfast, I took my phone off Do Not Disturb mode. The screen exploded with notifications. 30 missed calls from Jason, 20 messages ranging from demands to insults, and finally, to desperate confusion. "Where the hell are you?" The steel truck didn't arrive. "Pete from Pittsburgh Steel Supply says you canceled the account." "Mom, answer. There's no material for the Ford order. They're going to cancel the contract." "This is sabotage. You're a crazy old woman. Come fix this now." I smiled while sipping my coffee. It wasn't sabotage, Jason. It was real management. For years, he'd bragged to his golf buddies that he ran the foundry, when all he did was sit in my office playing on his phone while engineers and workers did the actual work. I dialed Pete's number, my steel supplier for 30 years. "Good morning, Pete. It's Dorothy." "Mrs. Mitchell, thank goodness you called. Your son is outside the warehouse making a scene. He almost climbed on the truck to unload material by force. I had to call security." "You did right, Pete. Did the lawyer deliver the official notice?" "Yes, ma'am. Account suspended until new order from the owner. Young Jason was screaming that he's the owner, that he'd sue me. But I explained, 'Look, young man, here the signature that matters is your mother's, and without her signature, there's no steel. Thank you for your loyalty, Pete. Don't worry. I'll let you know when we resume normal operations. For now, let the boy solve his own problems." "As you wish, boss. But I should warn you, he looked very agitated. He was kicking his truck's tires when I left." I hung up, imagining the scene perfectly. Jason in his designer shirt and expensive cowboy boots, throwing a tantrum in the industrial parking lot while workers from other businesses watched. Public humiliation had always been his greatest fear, and now he was serving it to himself on a stainless steel platter. I finished my breakfast with absolute calm. The eggs Benedict tasted better than any meal I could remember, because they didn't have the bitter taste of rush or reproach. I knew that cutting off the steel supply was just the first blow. The foundry had inventory in the warehouse, enough for 2 or 3 days if managed well. Jason could survive this week if he used the brain he supposedly had, but I needed to tighten the screws more. I called Frank, my trusted supervisor. "Ma'am?" he answered in a low voice. Machine noise rumbled in the background. "Frank, how's everything there?" "Oh, Mrs. Mitchell, it's total chaos. Mr. Jason arrived screaming like crazy, saying you sabotaged everything. He sent 2 helpers to buy steel from the depot in McKeesport, paying triple the normal price." "Let him waste money." "And the alloy formulas, does he have them?" "No, ma'am. This morning he wanted to check your technical notebook, but can't find it. He ordered me to cast some pieces for the Cleveland client, but when I told him I needed the exact special alloy formula, he got furious, said it was just mixing metals, that anyone could do it. I felt a pang in my chest, thinking about my professional reputation. If they produced defective pieces, clients would cancel contracts. But I had to remind myself that sometimes you need to let the ship sink a little for the captain to learn how to navigate. "Frank, listen carefully. If the pieces come out wrong, you don't take responsibility. Have Jason personally handle the complaints. If any client complains, refer them to the manager, meaning my son. Let him explain why the steel is breaking." "Yes, ma'am, but he's very aggressive with everyone. He tried to pay the gas supplier with the corporate card, and it was declined. He came back cursing. Not my problem, Frank. You stay calm. If he gets violent with the workers, shut down operations and leave. I'll pay everyone for the full day. I don't want anyone tolerating his abuse. Remember, I'm the owner." I hung up, feeling the pieces of my strategy fitting together perfectly. I spent the rest of the day walking through downtown Pittsburgh. I went to the cultural district, sat in a cafe, read the newspaper without hurry. I bought new clothes at a department store. I tried on dresses I never would have dared wear at the plant because of what people would say. I felt alive, free, powerful. My phone kept vibrating every 20 minutes, but I didn't look. Each vibration was a reminder that out there, in my old routine, chaos was blooming. At 5 in the afternoon, I returned to the hotel. The phone showed 60 missed calls. Jason had gone from anger to something resembling panic. There was a recent voicemail. I played it on speaker while taking off my shoes. Mom, you've made your point very clear, very funny. Now answer the phone. I have 4 clients threatening to cancel contracts because the last pieces came out defective. The main furnace is making a strange noise. Frank says he won't check it unless you come. Mom, seriously, this isn't a game anymore. Come back. I promise we'll talk calmly, but come back now. I promise we'll talk calmly. That phrase chilled my blood. Not even sorry for treating you like you were being dramatic. No. His concession was that now we'd talk calmly, as if my dignity depended on his mood of the moment. That night, I dined peacefully in my room. I ordered a porterhouse steak with garlic butter and another glass of wine. While eating, I reviewed my plan for the coming days. Jason was confused and desperate, but he still believed this was temporary. He needed to understand this wasn't a tantrum, but a total power restructure. Very early the next day, I called Mr. Patterson. Counselor, I want you to proceed with Phase 3. The personal expense audit? Exactly. Review all transactions on Jason's corporate card for the last 2 years. I want a detailed report of every restaurant, every trip, every personal purchase he disguised as a business expense. That could constitute corporate fraud, Mrs. Mitchell. I know perfectly well, Counselor, and I want the report ready by Monday. We're going to have a meeting with my son, and he's going to learn that stealing from his mother has legal consequences. I hung up feeling the weight of the decision. This wasn't revenge, it was justice. I spent the weekend at the hotel, peaceful, reading, watching movies, resting like I hadn't in decades. Meanwhile, I knew Jason was at the foundry dealing with machines he didn't know how to operate, clients demanding explanations, and suppliers who wouldn't sell him anything. Monday morning, the time came to return. I arrived at the foundry at 8 a.m. sharp. Mr. Patterson accompanied me with his briefcase full of documents. When the rideshare stopped in front of the main entrance, I saw Jason sitting on the office steps like an abandoned dog. He looked terrible. Wrinkled clothes, several days' beard growth, deep, dark circles under his eyes. Seeing me get out, he jumped to his feet. Mom, finally. Do you have any idea what hell this has been? I didn't answer. I walked straight to my office with the lawyer following. Jason entered behind us, sputtering excuses and complaints. Sit down, I ordered, pointing to the visitor's chair. This isn't your house, Jason. It never has been, the lawyer said, opening his folder. The property, the machinery, the accounts, everything is in the exclusive name of Mrs. Dorothy Mitchell. You live here and work here by your mother's grace. I put the audit report on the desk. Unauthorized personal expenses totaling $85,000 in 2 years. Restaurants, trips, clothes, all disguised as business expenses. Jason went pale. Mom, I work hard here. Work? I interrupted. You call shouting orders while others sweat work? You call using company money like your personal wallet work? I stood and looked at him directly. As of today, you're no longer manager. You're fired from administration. I'm going to rehire you as a maintenance assistant. Minimum wage. First task, clean the industrial bathrooms and the warehouse area. Are you insane? Jason shouted. I'm your son. Exactly. And as long as I live, I decide who works in my company and in what position. I pointed to the door. Either you accept or leave. But if you walk out, you don't come back. Not to the house, not to the plant. The silence that followed was as heavy as a molten steel ingot. Jason looked at the lawyer, then at me. He saw his future. A 45-year-old man with no references, no money, no real contacts. His arrogance shattered. Where are the work gloves? He asked quietly. In the maintenance room, and I want those bathrooms spotless. Jason left, dragging his feet. When the door closed, the lawyer looked at me with admiration, mixed with pity. You were very hard on him, Mrs. Mitchell. No, Counselor. I was fair. What was hard was raising that monster for 45 years. Today, I just started correcting my mistake. That afternoon, I watched Jason cleaning in a stained coverall and rubber gloves. The workers looked at him with a mixture of pity and satisfaction. I observed from my office. I didn't feel joy, I felt hope, because pain teaches what coddling destroys. If I had to break his ego to save his soul, I'd do it 1,000 times. 3 months have passed. Jason still works in maintenance. He's lost weight, learned to weld basic pieces, and for the first time in his life says, "Good morning" to me with respect. I still don't know if he'll learn to be a real man, but I've reclaimed my steel throne, and this time, nobody takes it from me. But here's what keeps me awake some nights. I look at him bent over, sweating, actually working for the first time in his life, and I wonder if I broke him to fix him, or if I broke him because I needed to feel powerful again. The line between justice and revenge is thinner than sheet metal, and sometimes when I catch my reflection in the office window, I see not the righteous steel queen I want to be, but a woman who waited 45 years to stop being a victim, and maybe waited too long. The factory runs better now, yes, but I trained my son to fail, then punished him for failing. And that truth burns hotter than any furnace in this plant. If you enjoyed this story, click subscribe and tell me in the comments what part impressed you. There's more tomorrow. See you there.